but easier said than done. If we truly are a spiritual program, we are called to surrender. But not to surrender in such a way that we throw everything up in the air and say it's up to you. We surrender in a way that says, your will be done. And help me to discover what that will is so that I can be in cooperation with you so that that may be followed in all that I am and in everything that I do. That is the surrender that we give to God. The surrender that calls us into partnership. And the surrender that helps us to challenge ourselves, not from the world's perspective, but from God's perspective. What it is that we are called to be and called to do. I don't know about you, but when I'm working this spiritual program that we call Christianity, when I am working one with God, I find that things do have a way of becoming right. And I begin to make decisions and choices in my life that come not from a place of ego, not from a place of control, but from a place of gratitude, from a place of thanksgiving. And the decisions that I make become much, much healthier, and they become much more in line with the values that I believe that are contained within my life and within my body. Because it's so easy to react to situations rather than to sit with them and figure out what God wants in each situation. When I react, when you react, because I believe that we're all on a human experience in a spiritual journey. But when we react, we often make very bad decisions.
That's right.
Very bad choices. And yet, when we can sit with our lives, when we can meditate, when we can really contemplate what is God doing, how can I surrender? How can I be in partnership with God at this moment? The decisions and choices that we make become far more clear and far more powerful and far more appropriate because we know that we have a God who believes in us. And the God that believes in us is the God who does not want us to fail. The God that believes in us is a God who wants us to be sober. The God who believes in us doesn't want to have people, places, and things having control over us, but rather wants us to engage just in ourselves and working out who we are. You know, I think that when we try to have power and control over people, places, and things, we're doing that because we don't want to work on ourselves. We don't want to do that heavy work of looking at who we are, of staying in the moment, of being blessed by that one day at a time, that 1 minute, that 1 second. Even being in church sometimes on a Sunday morning is a test of whether we can stay in the moment, about whether we can stay focused on what we have been called to do in this time. It's one of the reasons why I say at church that not one of us is a spectator, but every single one of us is a participant in this worship service. And I truly believe that if anyone leaves this place this morning saying, well, I got nothing out of that this morning, then you have to ask yourself, what did I put in?
All right.
How did I show up and be present this morning? Now, of course, there are some churches where you might leave thinking you didn't get much this morning, but that's mainly the fault of somebody else, perhaps. Oh, thank you, Crystal. You know, when I was, in some of my Church of England congregations, when you could just open a prayer book and have nothing to do apart from just read what was in the book, it was easy to leave without actually having something or being blessed by something. And that's not a criticism necessarily, but we weren't trained to participate in worship. We were trained only to be spectators. And your mind could wander into 1,000 different directions because it was just written there for you. What I truly believe is that's not the kind of worship that God is necessarily calling God's people to. I believe that God is calling God's people to be participating in the worship, to participate at a level that we are confronted, convicted, challenged, to stay in the moment and to live one day at a time. Sweet Jesus. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, What are the things in your life, around in your surroundings, that you cannot change? The people who still use you and abuse you. The situations that still try to manipulate you. What are those moments in your life that you cannot change no matter how much you try? The serenity to change the things I can. The fact of the matter is, the only thing you can change is you. The only thing you can change is you. What is it that in you needs to be changed? What is it about your attitude? What is it about your faith? What is it about your relationship with God? What is it that needs to be changed in order that all the rest of the things will be changed? Because when one change happens, it's like a domino effect. One thing changes and everything changes. What would it be if you are in recovery and you've not been to a meeting in a week and you're wondering why you're in chaos this morning? Change that one thing. Get to a meeting. What if you've come into church this morning for the first time, or perhaps you haven't been for a few weeks, and you've been wondering why your life has been chaotic for the last few weeks or so, and so you ask yourself, what do I need to change? And perhaps that change is you need to make a decision to come to worship a bit more often. What are the things that you can change that will create a difference? And God grant me the serenity to know the difference. Not to make excuses for the things that I do actually have control over, that I can change about me. Stop blaming other people. Stop attributing responsibility to other people and take some responsibility for our own lives. When Jesus calls us to love our neighbor as ourselves, he calls us to know ourselves so deeply that we are then able to love our neighbor.